we're almost afraid to say the things that we dream out loud because then we're embarrassed because we feel like, well, that's not realistic.
Life is meant to be lived. And so you don't want to have any regrets. So do the thing. I think naturally we are destined to be builders. Biologically, it comes down to our nervous system wanting to feel busy, because when we feel busy and we feel stressed, we get this dopamine hit of like, okay, I'm worthy enough. Somebody needs me. The kindest form of self-betrayal is those moments where we think the self-sacrifice is serving the greater good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inspired Authority. Most people think burnout comes from working too hard. But what if burnout is actually the result of abandoning yourself for too long? Today's guest, who I adore, Amy Looper, is a global resilience speaker, trauma-informed coach, and former high-performing sales leader who helps women understand the hidden nervous system patterns driving perfectionism, people-pleasing, burnout, and chronic stress. After navigating profound personal adversity, burnout, trauma, and rebuilding her life from the ground up, Amy turned her experience into a mission, helping high-achieving women stop surviving and start leading from a place of true self-trust and resilience. This episode is for the person who's accomplished on paper, but knows deep down that they're exhausted from performing strength instead of actually feeling it. Amy, welcome back to the show, because we had you on my last show and I can't wait for you to be here today.
Thanks, Laura, for having me again. Can't wait.
Absolutely. So before we get into the work that you do, let's talk about who you are today outside of everything that you've built.
Yeah, so I live in Arizona. I'm a mom of two and one Bernie doodle. And yeah, we're loving life. You know what? My kids are in their preteens. We're busy. We're always running around. I've turned into the mom taxi. And so that's the phase of life I'm in right now.
Yeah, that happens. That's what they do. Well, until they start driving, and then they can chauffeur you.
That would be wonderful. Yes.
Amy, what is something about you people wouldn't expect based on how you show up publicly?
I love that question. You know, this last week, I just reconnected with a friend of mine who I hadn't talked to in over 20 years, and we were in a garage band in high school called Mad Odyssey.
What position did you play in the band?
Yeah, lead singer, guitar, all this stuff. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, why did I not know that about you? That is incredible. I cannot wait to hear more about that, actually, offline.
My inner Gwen Stefani, is trying to come out.
I love Gwen Stefani. That's so good. On the last episode, I talked about moshing. So I love a good band.
I'll have history there.
Yeah, well, let's keep it in history because your girl can't do it no more.
Hey, I can still do that. I'm just saying, I still go to shows.
Yeah, I like to be in the back, though, not in the pit.
There's I have a collection of Adidas shoes, and I'm like, man, when I put on those Adidas shoes, I turn like 17, 18 again, and I just feel free.
I love it. Yeah, I love going to the shows. I feel like a whole different woman. I love wearing all black, it's my thing, but I love wearing all black, going to my shows, and just, yeah, that's my vibe. I love it. Well, we'll have to share music soon. So, Amy, I feel like just me knowing you for some time now, you've lived so many different lives, so many different experiences, and you've come up with so many different ways of helping women. Maybe you could kind of give us an overview of some of the work that you've done in the past and some of the work that you're leaning into today.
Yeah, so the first 20 years of my career was in sales, did sales leadership, SaaS sales, that kind of thing, and always mentored women in that capacity. And then 6 years ago, left the corporate space. I was in cybersecurity at the time, left to do some consulting, did some sales enablement, and then that naturally flowed into just deeper dive into coaching. So in the coaching space, I just fell I was going through a lot of personal changes in my marriage and my health and trying to figure out all these things midlife. And I think like many people that are kind of listening to your show, like we get to a point after, midlife kind of hits at certain points during certain transitions where you start to like look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, okay, like I was that girl. I was the rock girl in the mosh pit. Like, and then now I'm this. And then like, your identity changes a bunch of times. So I really fell in love with human behavior. I've always liked that being in sales. But what I really loved is figuring out, okay, what is the root cause underneath stress, underneath anxiety, underneath some of the behaviors that we do to keep us in this place of not really being totally authentic, right? Like I found myself always going like 90% of the way, but that last 10% always felt like either a misalignment or it was just unfinished business of some kind, where it's like, oh, I'm not closing the loop on those things. And why is that? Why is that? Let's get curious. So I found this pattern with high achieving women that is really, it's really repeatable. Like I see it all, and I see it with women in sales all the time. And that root is like that people pleaser behavior, but the root of that is really just conditioning. It's a survival skill, of just, comes from how we grew up and all the things. It's a survival skill of just trying to, be good enough, but that core wound sometimes holds us in these little boxes. So that's what I love help women really break out of, is that little box that they feel like they have to play in so that they can play a big game.
Man, there's so many things that you said that I want to dig into. I think one thing that I see often is, as high performers, we normalize chronic stress and anxiety. Why is it that we do that and we look at anxiety and stress as like a part of success?
Yeah, well, it's become a definition of our success, right? And so, it biologically it comes down to our nervous system wanting to feel busy, because when we feel busy and we feel stressed, we get this dopamine hit of like, okay, I'm worthy enough. Somebody needs me, right? And then you throw on maybe caregiving or leading a team. And then, because leading a team is really the same thing. You're still doing a lot of caregiving in those roles. And it's like that self-sacrifice sneaks in behind the scenes, where it's like, okay, I'm not going to go to the workout this morning first. I'm going to just make sure everybody's okay. Or your nervous system starts scanning the room before a meeting or during a meeting. Like, how's everybody? Where's the meeting? Where's the meeting? And then you just start to like be a chameleon. And a lot of us, especially, and this is why I love women in sales, it's like we are professional chameleons that have gotten paid really well over the years doing that. But then a lot of times we end up in a place of burnout because you just can't keep that up, right? Eventually you just lose your identity. And that's where the identity crisis hit.
How does burnout and nervous system dysregulation change the way someone sees themselves and the way that they define their identity?
Everything that we perceive and experience goes through this layer of the nervous system. And it's wild, really, because if you look at the nerve, it's such like little teeny nerves that just rule everything. And so it connects with our prefrontal cortex. That's the front of our brain, right? And how we experience emotions. Like our whole system is there to like threat detect first to keep us safe. And so if something, even just a little trigger of something pops up and you're like, oh, that's taking your brain back to a time that wasn't safe. It's just, gathering data. It's doing what it's supposed to do. And it's there to keep you safe. So then you may make a decision to hold back in a conversation, or you may not make a decision to move forward and make the video for your business because it's like, oh, fear of visibility and rejection. Like there's so many things that go into it that it gets pretty complex. But at the base level, when we are in chronic stress, it's that fight or flight that we stay in, and we can become hypervigilant. And so that hypervigilance especially for women that are ambitious, like we problem solve, we want to figure it out. We know that everything is figure outable. But in that, it's like oh my gosh, we're frying our brains overthinking and overanalyzing. And what does that do to our body? Well, that pumps the adrenaline, the cortisol, the stress hormones. And that's why I see a lot of women in midlife, especially in some of these different career paths like sales or finance or, you know, some technology where they're getting autoimmune diseases, and they're like, why can't I figure this out? Why have I gained a lot of weight? Why have I lost a lot of weight? It just kind of depends on how your body reacts. Why am I in, chronic pain all the time? Why do I have hormonal imbalances and getting my period forever, or going into early menopause? So all of this stuff is connected. And so we have to really peel back so many onion layers for everyone on a personal level to see what's really happening.
Yeah, one of my guests, Rima, she was on the first episode. She talked about getting autoimmune through her experience with burnout and stress. We all feel it at some point. I guess the big question is, how do we as high performers distinguish ambition from like survival mode?
I think you need to ask yourself, am I in alignment with my values? Is this decision in alignment with where I really want to go? And here's the thing I've noticed the last 4 years of really doing deep coaching with people. And this was a question I had such a hard time answering myself. And I noticed every single client of mine had a very hard time answering this initially. And it's, what do you want? It's like, well, what do you want? And you're like, I don't know what I want. It's because so many years has been, taken by the self-betrayal and letting that identity not really shine through by stating what we really want and need, right? Letting other people's needs and wants go before our own. And so over time, that can deteriorate. Or sometimes people end up in, like in my case, I was in a toxic relationship for 17 years. 17 years is a long time, and so what I had to do over this last year, I started to see massive nervous system dysregulation, like so much I could barely get out of bed, joint pain, massive like weight fluctuation, just a lot of autoimmune-like symptoms. Wasn't autoimmune, but it sure, represented like fibromyalgia and different flare-ups. And it's because that body is just so used to surviving in those kind of environments that when you get to a place of peace, when you get out of that environment, that's when actually your body has worse symptoms than it ever did in it. So you start to come down and you start to re-regulate, and you need to do a lot of somatic work to be able to actually rewire and get to a place of safety again. It's amazing when you get there, but the journey through it is a little hairy at times.
The what do you want question really stuck out to me because I'm learning that as I'm coaching people.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I kind of making a joke, but it's not a joke. I'll go out on like a Friday night and like meet people, or I'm hanging out with my friends, and I'll ask them the question, what would you do if limits didn't exist? And it's wild, the answers I get that are so small, like people just playing so small, because we're almost afraid to say the things that we dream out loud, because then we're embarrassed because we feel like, well, that's not realistic, so I don't want to say it out loud. Like, how do you help people when they call themselves realists, or they really are so stuck in that box because they don't even think that what they dream is even possible, so they'll never want to say it out loud? Like, what would you say to somebody that's feeling that way, or scared to tell me what they would do if limits didn't exist?
Yeah. So when I first started coaching, I did a lot of leading with the leadership stuff like that, the mindset work and all that. Then what I noticed is I was coaching a lot of women who had been through really big life. And I noticed that pattern. Maybe it was trauma, maybe it was just a lot of stress, whatever it was. So then I flipped up my prescription, and I started doing more of the body-based work first to help them understand and get back into connection with your body. And then we would do a couple of different meditations that help them climb this mountain to see the gifts of the relationships of people. I have this really beautiful one that people like are brought to tears doing it every single time. And I love it because it really connects them back into their whole journey of their life, of like these different people coming in and the gifts that they got from these souls, because I definitely believe we're all just souls here to serve each other. And then we're climbing this road and this journey together. And when they get to the top, they're looking back and they're looking at the impact that they've made. So I flip it into, what is the impact that you think you're really here to make, so that they can connect back into meaning and purpose. I find that when people do that, then it takes the pressure off of the thing, because they may not like care about the earthly achievement, and that's totally fine. Like, who cares, right? But if we're here to serve, like, let's go transform other people's lives, And so then we really stay connected into that.
Yeah, that's so good. I like to start with, who were you before the world told you who to be? And then we kind of like break down, how did you get here? And what's the narrative that you're telling yourself now versus a narrative you need to tell yourself to get to your next level and where you want to go. And what does success look like for you? Like, we have to define that, or else we'll never find success. Because if we don't know what it looks like, it's almost like getting in an Uber and asking them to, somebody told me this, getting in an Uber and telling them, oh yeah, just go. Like, where are we going? You know what I'm saying? So that's really good. And then the impact piece, that's in the Inspired Authority method, that's dominion. That's where it's like, you fully know what you're here to do, and you're ultimately achieving that and creating impact for other people through all of the fruits that you created for yourself.
I was just going to say, I think, because you mentioned dominion, I think breaking down those lies, that's the piece in the identity, right? Where it's like, let's break down the lies that those situations and those things, a lot of times I've worked with women that have gone through toxic relationships, sometimes abusive relationships, where the lies from the enemy were like wrapped up into a bunch of control, manipulation, but death by 1,000 cuts. And it was done very covertly over time. So these women have had horrendous experiences, but it's been over many, 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 many years that it just chips away at that identity piece, and then causing havoc in the body, which causes that paralysis. And so for people that have that complex trauma, we really have to go about it in many, many different layers, because the lies will come sneak back in, and it's like we got to build up those boundaries. And so it's such a process. I love that you work on dominion, because that's what we're here to do.
Well, my whole method is based on the Bible, so we do have to talk about that at some point later. Okay, so there's so many things I want to dive into with you, because you have so much great experience in working with people that have been through hard stuff, right? You talk about this concept of self-betrayal and self-abandonment. At what point did you realize that a lot of what looked like professionalism, I guess you could call it, was actually self-abandonment? Like, can you talk to us a little bit about this concept?
I noticed that when I got out of the corporate environment, you start to do things a little bit differently. But I noticed that when I really had to peel back the onion layers after getting divorced and getting out of what I was in, I noticed, like, oh my gosh, I was just trying to do the right thing, right? Either by my kids or for, something part of the business, or, always trying to play by the rule book. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're always trying to play by the rule book. We are always trying to, do these different kind of things. And then I saw in masterminds, right? A lot of masterminds, I think, do a disservice to people, quite frankly, because it's so guilt and shame driven. It's like, change your mindset, like, do that. Well, if the person's been through a whole lot of life, they can't change their mindset biologically. So that's why I take that body first approach with most of my clients, because the ones that come to me to coach, they've been through a lot of stuff. And so we have to start with that, and we have to redefine what does that look like. And so professionalism, can be, hey, I am really confident in boundaries, and I'm no longer going to subscribe to the idea that boundaries are evil or bad, or I'm going to get in trouble for them, or I'm going to come into a whole male dominated company and feel like I'm, the label, the label of the witch, right? Where we can't actually hold our authority and hold our values and hold everything that we stand for. Sometimes that's really looked down upon. And if you find yourself in that, then be okay with knowing that that's not alignment. And that's also huge. I think a lot of people job search with scarcity and kind of navigate their career with scarcity because they think, well, I have to fit into the box in order to survive. Well, that's not the case, actually. We have to give ourselves permission to let go of the rule book or what we think it is.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You always say so many good things. It's hard to not dive into all of them. So I do want to call out the finding the right coach because let's be honest, as coaches, we're not right for everyone. And you're right about potentially getting involved with someone who doesn't quite understand what you're going through. And the work that you're doing is on this like physiological, is that the right word for it? Physiological, that level, and like the trauma piece of it all too. Like now that I am doing this work, I'm making sure that when we start the engagement, I'm super clear on what I can and cannot do. And if somebody is looking for a coach, I think coaches are great for many different things, right? You've got therapy is one thing, and then you've got coaching is a completely different thing. And then there's different coaches for different seasons and for different purposes. And so, Amy, it'd be interesting to get your perspective on this. If somebody is having a hard time in their career and they're trying to find a coach, what would you say are some of the things that they should consider when they're having a conversation with a potential coach before they kind of move forward in that engagement?
I think getting clear on the problems that they want to solve. So it may be a career issue, but maybe it's not. Maybe it's a different kind of circumstantial life issue. Maybe it's presenting as health, but maybe we get into something else. But the difference, right? When do I call a therapist on Lyra versus hire a coach independently or what have you, or source a coach through those different ways. Therapy will help you really get to, the bottom and process some deep emotions, but they're going to focus on that. They're not going to root you into goal setting and moving you out of that necessarily. Now, some do. Like I go to a somatic therapist myself, working through some stuff as a third party, even though I can do this stuff. It's much easier to co-regulate with an outside provider. So even I, as a coach, use someone that's a somatic therapist to help me do some of this work that I'm doing in my own journey. So that's just important to know, like, what problems am I here to solve? And sometimes you just don't know. So sometimes you just need to start talking with someone, and then you can see if you're aligned. But again, start with your values. Are you aligned in the same value path? If you've gone through something traumatic and you feel like maybe you've been gaslit by the medical system, or you feel like, oh my gosh, somebody doesn't understand, and I need someone that has relatable experience, then look for that. Are they in the same stage of life as you? Like I personally, as a mom of two, gone through as much life as I've gone through, I probably wouldn't go to a coach that hasn't been through some of that stuff because they just won't be able to understand some of the things and nuances. So, but same on the flip side, like if I was in my single, years and navigating early stage stuff or just that kind of life, I'm not going to want to go to someone that like is a trauma coach because I didn't need that then. You know what I mean? So I think it's just relatability is huge.
That's so good. I also like to emphasize, I tell this story all the time. My fitness coach has a fitness coach. This guy is like shredded. This guy is huge. He still has a coach. Professional baseball players, they still have coaches. So I think it's really important to say that there is a purpose for it and it is helpful, even like we got to put the egos aside and know when to raise our hands and say, hey, I need some help.
You know what I did? The first thing, I got divorced last year. Not excited or proud about that, but like it happens, right? The first thing I did was A, I took my kids on a cruise, but B, once we sold that house, I put a bet on myself with a big business coach again, because I was like, no, I cannot. I know that this is going to make me want to really retreat back and like do things like try to play it safe for the kids and do things in the rule book and in the order, right? I knew I was going to go down that road, but I was like, no, I need this other person and community around me to really keep my eyes set on the thing I always was building. You know, even though life kind of takes you off track, there's still an integration of both.
Yeah, for sure. Now, something else you had mentioned that we really need to discuss is boundaries, because boundaries, that's what set me actually on this journey of inspired authority. Was I finally set a boundary. It was enlightening. It was so good.
Hence the lightning picture behind you. Is that light tracking through, or is that lightning?
It is. No, it is light coming through. I do. Yeah, the light. I saw the light. My light is God, and I know you have the same light, so that's always good. So, why is boundary setting so difficult for us high achievers?
Well, that's part of the deception that and speaking of faith and deception, like if we don't have boundaries, then we're just open to everything and everybody. And then, well, that's not good either. So we have to have boundaries to protect our time and energy. But I think we have such a problem with it because we come from, usually those of us who have a problem with it, have this appeasement style to us, right? It's a, if you want to get clinical, it's a fawning trauma response, but it's appeasing other people to make we feel good when everybody else in the room feels good, right? And so the boundary, well, that might upset somebody. That may ruffle feathers. And it does, especially if you've been doing it your whole life and then all of a sudden you're really good at boundaries. I made that shift over the last couple of years myself. And let me tell you, it definitely upset the apple cart on many levels of my life. However, it brings people into alignment that are supposed to be there. And it gets rid of the things that are really taking away from your time and energy and taking you off of your course. And so if we're to be obedient in our callings, then we need to really make sure we have the boundaries, because there's only 24 hours in the day,
Yeah, for sure. So for somebody that is sitting here thinking, okay, I'm a high achiever, I'm doing well, but my body doesn't feel good, I'm really stressed, cortisol is high, stress, anxiety, all the things. I'm people pleasing, I'm not setting boundaries. Like, what's one thing that they can do today to start thinking about how they can start to put themselves first and set expectations and boundaries on what they will accept and what they are no longer allowing in their life?
Here's the micro thing you can do every second of the day. Really pay attention to how you're breathing. Usually people in that state will be breathing from up here, right? Or I hold my breath when I email. Yeah. And so I have to really work on, wait a minute, am I filling my belly with breath? It becomes a natural thing over time where you're not even thinking about it. But that's a big shift, because once you start to realize it matters that I am actually filling air into my full system, then the bigger things start to matter. It's like, well, then it matters where I want to go to lunch. Well, then it matters if I really want to watch that movie tonight, or it matters if I want to really take the job promotion or not, So it starts with the micro things like the breath, putting yourself on a very regimented, disciplined, regulated schedule. Why do we want to do this? Because your body loves to know that it's consistently going to be okay. So if you can get up about the same time without scrolling your phone, get up and really set your intentions for the day. have some, like I get up at like 4:30 every day because I've got kids and we've got the whole kid thing going on. So, but for me, that gives me enough time to set intentions, to do couple of like non-negotiable things in the morning if I want, or I do a lot of like, because I've been doing a lot of recovery work, I've been doing a lot of sound healing and like nervous system stuff, fascia work, all that kind of stuff. I do all that in the morning because that's giving myself a gift. And so by doing this kind of stuff, I mean, I'll tell you guys, like my personal journey has been, I eliminated complex PTSD this last year. That was horrible to go through, but you can get through the big, big, big stuff in life by doing these little things that may seem wooey. It actually works.
Yeah, that's the stewardship pillar of inspired authority, which is really starting to own your energy and your time and all the things that you do. I will say though, I'm between the 6 and 7 a.m. I wish I could get to 4:30, maybe one day.
Well, and then circadian rhythm is a real thing too, right? Like you're either naturally wired for morning or night. I'm a morning person, clearly, but like 8 o'clock on toast, kids go to bed, I go to bed. So, but so just knowing those things about yourself though, and just knowing like, this is how I'm wired, that also brings you back into alignment because you're being authentic.
Yeah, I like that. This is how I'm wired. I think that's really important to know that, like, again, it goes back to who you are at your core. Who's your identity? What's your identity? And stop trying to be something and somebody that you're not, because that's when you have misalignment, and that's when you ultimately start to feel all the other things with the body and the mind.
Yes. Yeah. And it's that idea that like, we're not chasing anymore. This is a big one, I think, also for women in our profession. We were taught to learn how to chase deals and do business, but we're chasing it. It's like, wow, the shift I've had to do as an entrepreneur, and then especially in this new season of mine as a single mom, like, don't chase, let it come to you because you're worthy of receiving. But I didn't get to that point until I did a lot of the nervous system work, because I had to rewire everything on how my body braced for the day. My body used to just be like, wake up, tense, let's go get some deals. Let's go find some clients. Let's go do this, right? But now it's like, no, wait a minute. No one's going to buy from that energy. They're going to feel that, right? And so instead of that, you got to like learn how to just like take a chill pill.
I love that. Let's talk about being worthy of receiving, because that's important. So you have a talk called You Earned This Room, which is powerful. Why do so many accomplished women still question where and whether they belong?
Yeah, I think they don't believe it. They just don't have that in their core. Maybe they got a title, like maybe they've made it up the ranks to director or VP or whatever, and it's been by hard work. But again, it's that push energy. They don't actually really receive it themselves, that like, wow, look at all of the great value and talent that I'm giving the rest of my team and the world. Like they don't see that. They just feel like, I have to get better. I have to do better. I have to do better. I have to do better, right? It's the achievement-oriented mindset that's that push energy.
So what changes when someone stops trying to prove themselves, stops chasing, and starts trusting and believing in themselves?
They are calmer. I can tell you that their ability to just lead personally and professionally, it just comes through as authentic, calm. It's in that what we call embodied leadership, right? Where people trust us. They're like, oh, you seem cool, calm, and collected, like, but you have this heap of chaos and uncertainty around you. How do you stay so cool, calm, and collected? It's because you're standing on what you'd said earlier, the pillars, right? You're the pillar of like your strength and your identity. And you know that like God's got you. You might not know what's in the future. Gosh, I don't know what's in my future as a single mom. It's been like a lot of that, every single moment of every day. But at the same time, I'm writing a new book all the way about how Jesus guided me through. But it's like that, it's like that. It's that mindset of, I know something for me, it's Jesus, but like whatever you believe in, They're going to guide you through to the next thing. You don't have to do it all by yourself. You don't have to wear the weight of the world on your shoulders, you know?
What are some simple ways outside of, so we talked about breathing. How else can people start to regulate their nervous system when they're in these high pressure environments? Because I feel like there's a lot of environments that are high pressure. It's not just work, right? Like some people are in high pressure to pay their bills. Some people are in high pressure to get themselves out of their house because of just the environment, to show up online, to show up in a room, to speak up. High pressure environments are all around us. How can people, like outside of, like, I love the breathing, what are some other techniques people can use to regulate their nervous system in these environments?
Yeah. Well, I think you got to have some goals. You got to know where you want to go. You know, even if it's just, this is my goal for the hour. I am going, becoming a strong finisher, because the minute you close a loop and you finish something that you said you were going to start, you build confidence and self-trust. And the next time you do it again, it just keeps going on up, right? So the more you can do that. So if you're in a really bad place where you're just like frozen for whatever reason, and you're like, wow, I just feel immobile, right? Maybe you're in deep grief. Grief will do that to a person. Just start small, just one thing, one conversation. But closing a loop of, I'm going to say that I'm going to read a book today, or I'm going to say that I'm going to open the Bible today, or I'm going to, do that one stretching, 15 minutes of stretching. Well, do 15 minutes. Don't do 14. Don't cheat yourself, because every time you are congruent with what you just claimed you're going to do, again, you're congruent in integrity with yourself, and your body feels that. Your body's like, oh, okay, you got me up here. I got you down here. Like, we're good,
I think that our body will allow ourselves to continue to lie to ourselves when we allow it a few times. It's like, I say I'm going to do this. Yeah, I say I'm going to do this, and then I don't do it. So then my body and my brain is like, all right, well, what's the risk of not doing it? I've done it in the past. It's fine to lie to myself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, all of those destructive behaviors that human beings have, nobody should feel guilty on this call if you're going through stuff. We've all had patterns that have been ones that we didn't want to keep around. But then you have to cut the pattern, and that's up to you to say, like, okay, I'm breaking that. We're going to do a different way. But I have this whole model of the 5 cornerstones of resilience. And one of those cornerstones is commitment. You have to be committed. I can't change you as your coach. Just like if you're married to someone and they don't want to change, you can't change that person. I had to learn that the hard way. But you can't change other people. You have to want it. We can help facilitate, but that's all we can do as coaches. We can't do the work for you.
Yeah. So how does one rebuild their self-trust after years of overriding their instincts?
Yeah, such a good one. That is such lived experience. And it's just what we talked about, closing the loops, saying you're going to do something and showing up for yourself, and sometimes that means putting up boundaries if you don't feel like having, the weekly family dinner or holiday or whatever. It may ruffle feathers, but it's okay, because you're actually saying, I need this time. And I need to do things a little bit differently right now, but I have to do that for me. And you have to be okay with that. It's not being selfish. You're actually being very clear, and leaders are full of clarity, and they're filled with that kind of communication that tells the other party, like, hey, this is where I'm at right now. So that the other party, whether it's your family, friends, whatever, know if you're coming or going or not. I didn't realize till I went through the experience I went through how actually it was really bad to just constantly be accommodating. I thought I was doing a good service, but when I looked at it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm being inauthentic. I actually didn't want to eat pizza. I wanted, sushi. Like, it's just one of those things where you have to look at it a different way.
Yeah. So you've rebuilt yourself through many difficult seasons, what did healing teach you about identity?
Healing taught me that I can reclaim who I've always been and it's the parts work, like shed the parts of me that didn't serve. And so for me, the parts of me that didn't serve, what was the overthinker. I'm very analytical, like to overthink. The people pleaser, the fawner. Those parts of me that were trying to get it right and play by the rule book, that kept me small. And so when you know some of those different parts, you can work with those because you know that they're just protecting you. They're trying to protect the 5-year-old little girl, right? Or little boy. And so they're just parts of us that we all have in different ways, and they're protectors. And when we allow those protectors to just know that, hey, we're on this other path now, and you can stand down. Think of them as your little prison guards in your head, in your subconscious. Like you can tell them to just stand down, and over a repetition of behavior, they will stand down. But it will take these little titrated movements and moments in your life experiences to help get them completely out of the way so that you are operating in a different identity level.
What is something or one belief that you had to unlearn in order to become the woman that you are today?
The self-sacrifice is, that's not leadership. Self-sacrifice is not leadership, And I still I catch myself often attuning to, especially going through like transition in the identity of motherhood, right? Married, now single mom, there was a big identity shift there. And I found myself just always listening. Is everybody okay? Is the dog okay? Is the kids okay? Are they okay? And then I'd like miss a lot of time doing my work and staying focused. My nervous system was just looking for safety because my whole world had completely nuclear bombed, like everything. And so then as everything just like blew apart, we were dismantling businesses and houses. I mean, just everything. So like, of course, it's a natural human response to then be like, okay, is everybody okay? I'm the mama bear, right? And so you have to work with that. And then over time, you get through the grieving process and then you get through many different things. But over time, then you're like, okay, we are okay. We are okay. Things are different, but it's just going to be different,
Yeah, definitely. So you talk about the kindest form of self-betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Yeah, the kindest form of self-betrayal is those moments where we think the self-sacrifice is serving the greater good. And it's not, because it's coming from a kindness. It's coming from an area of kind, right? Like I've never worked with people who deal with this that aren't like super empathetic and caring and, they want to help the world. But what they don't realize is that self-sacrifice is not allowing them to really turn on their full light.
How do people, realize that they're self-sacrificing, that they're filling everyone else's cup, but theirs is so freaking empty? How do they come to realize that? What can they do about it? Maybe like what's something that they can do to create a new identity that doesn't self-sacrifice?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it on my clients time and time again, and I've been there too myself. It's like that burnout. It's when they've hit, unfortunately, this is a human thing. Most 99% of humans have to hit a deep moment in their life where something very important to them has just fallen through. And it's usually in the 3 buckets, right? Health, wealth, their career, their health, or relationship. And so something there usually has to be in breakdown. Job loss, divorce, maybe they become a parent, maybe they are an empty nester. All of those big points in time where you're transitioning. And our identities always transition with that. They have to transition at some point, but sometimes they're just in that in-between stage. So yeah, so that's where we kind of see a lot of people have those symptoms. And sometimes for women, it's a lot in that midlife phase of their own bodies are changing so much too, and so it's all kind of coming together. And that's where it feels super heavy for them because they're like, no, seriously, Some of these things I could deal with, but like when I can't focus, I'm having, a lot of hormonal issues and other things, like then it becomes so great that even the highest performers who love to keep their armor on and they're not very open, they're like, oh, no, maybe something does need to change.
Yeah, I mean, I want anyone listening that feels that way to know that they're not alone, obviously, because you've helped, I should say, you've helped a lot of people. You've dealt with some situations your own, right? But you've helped a lot of people and you've worked through it yourself. So those people aren't alone. I am in the algorithm right now that I am getting a lot of women who are midlife, and we call it midlife, but like, honestly, it's like 35-year-old women like me, right? That are fed up with all the bullshit they were fed their whole lives on what success is and what it looks like and how you get there. And now they're like, I'm done. And they're blowing their own lives up to start a new path. Like, I love it. I'm watching along, and some of these women are just doing it.
Yes, yes, yeah. And you know what? Like life is meant to be lived. And so you don't want to have any regret. So do the thing, build. And I think naturally we are destined to be builders. So if you're not building, guys, like if you're just taking orders and you're clocking in and out, you're living at such a level here where you could be up here really in your whole creative zone and creating impact and all that. I'm not saying you have to start a business. You can do that. You can do corporate. You can do both. There's this misconception that like one is better than the other. I've been on both sides. It's not better on the other side one way or the other. There's just differences. And because trust me, building a business is so filled with stress. And you got to put in your own capital and all the things. Like it's a lot. So, but you can lead from the seat that you're in, and there can be unlimited possibilities in all of that. So, it's that inner work that really is the game changer in how we're presenting ourselves and what's coming out of our mouth and what our belief system is. Because what you believe will come out here. So that's usually what we have to work on.
So when you think about confidence and authority, like people that really are aligned, they know what they want, and they're now going after it. Like, what does authority, let's use that word, right? Inspired authority. What does authority mean to you now versus maybe 10 years ago, right? Because you've built, again, many different programs, and you've had many different ways that you've built authority within your own life and your career. Like, what does authority look like now versus 10 years ago?
Yeah. I mean, I used to work for, in software sales and, top, 5 times President's Club Award winner, BMWs, trips, all sorts of stuff, right? Back then I thought, oh my gosh, I was at the pinnacle, right? I was like, oh, I'm just going to keep on moving up and lead big teams, and like corporate's going to run my life and I'm going to love it. I remember thinking that like, oh, I broke the cycle in my own family, like, like top earner, that kind of thing. But then life took me down some of the roads, and I was like, and then I became a founder and all that. Now to me, authority means actually, I'm going to answer this as it is today, because this has also changed quite a bit over the last year. Today, in this chair, I can literally say, I trust staying obedient. Oh, I feel it. Staying obedient to God. Staying obedient to God, trusting that I'm supposed to build and impact women in a way that is helping heal generation after generation. And that's impact. That's impact. It doesn't always look like consistent, like the corporate stuff does, but it looks like in a different way. And so, and guys, that might mean, it doesn't mean you have to walk away from things, but that might mean that you're serving in a way that you connect with someone at Starbucks, or that maybe you write a blog, or maybe you just send that one note to the person you haven't talked to in 20 years. like your service could be so many different ways. So for me today in the seat, I would say that is impact when I'm really helping people change a life. And it may result monetarily or it may not. Like I'm unattached to that.
Yeah. And I think you have to be unattached to the outcome because the impact is what should matter. And then here's the thing. You can find ways to monetize your impact, right? But you first have to get aligned with who you are, what you want, where you're going, and the impact you want to make in this world. And then just start somewhere, small steps, like you mentioned earlier. Do one thing, just get started, and then you can find a way to monetize it. There's people doing incredible things online, living their purpose, their mission, doing all the things that they love, and then they found ways to monetize it.
Totally. And they've spent a long time in the messiness behind the scenes. So the key really is to stay consistent, not give up, keep going, even if it looks like, oh my gosh, is this thing ever going to come together? Because I can tell you it always does for people, look at Mr. Beast, right? He made all these things, all these videos for so many years and then it finally clicked, right? So and we see that across the continuum with people that are in their creative zone. So I would say just get out there and just make impact. And you just never know. It's like the next conversation could open up the world to something completely, really, amazing and aligned.
So Amy, before we end here today, is there anything that you would like to leave with our audience that you wish somebody was telling you, even maybe just a year ago, right? What's something you'd like to leave with the audience today?
Yeah, I just want you, life doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be sometimes we get attached to always achieving the unconquerable thing. I was addicted to that journey for way too long, where I thought I was always searching for the toughest challenge, and the toughest relationship to win over or whatever it was. I thought that's what it had to be. And then I realized I did a lot of the inner work and things over the years. And it's no, actually, that's not healthy. We get to really just aligned things come our way, and we get to calm our body down so it's not bracing all the time. And it can just be you can just breathe through the day, easier.
Well, thank you, Amy. Thank you for being on. I always love these conversations. I always love time with you. So thank you again for being on. And everyone, if this episode resonated with you, please comment, subscribe. If there was something that really touched you, let Amy and I know, reach out, leave a comment. We want to continue to pour into people, both of us. So knowing what's resonating here is helpful. And then, of course, if anything resonated for somebody in your life, share this with them. Give them this gift of this episode and this conversation today. But thank you again, Amy, and I can't wait to connect soon.